Continue from the previous. Here we go to the concept development part. First we talk about the need analysis. So as a backbone of the modern military, the main battle tank is always an essential part of any defense system. Thus, in order to build a complete national defense system for Israel, the Israel military is in great need of such a new type of main battle tank. And under the consideration of the low population size of Israel, which is only 9 million people, which is only 9 million people in Israel. Thus, the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, the primary goal after preserving a certain degree of combat power is to reduce the soldier casualty. So the Merkava series of tanks is mainly focused on to improve their defensive power. And in addition to focus on the protection on the tank crew, the Merkava also needs to focus on the survivability of the tank itself. Which means the tank needs to be designed to could be wounded, but need to be extremely difficult to completely destroy. And here's the concept to explore. So with the tank's protective performance and protection of its onboard crew as the primary goals, the design of the Merkava tank chose to place the tank's engine and the power pack at the front of the hull. Comparing with the rear-mounted engine, which is the way that the word generally used. The rear-mounted engine has several advantages. First is conducive to reduce the height of the tank, so as to reduce the frontal impact area of the tank, and thus could reduce the probability of the tank being hit. And the second, a rear-mounted engine is good to improve the overall mobility of the tank. And third, it's good to protect the tank's engine and the power pack. And fourth, it's also good to the maintenance of the engine. And thus, the rear-mounted engine design is a common design approach used around the world. But for Israel, although there are many disadvantages of having a front-mounted engine, but that disadvantage does not offset the benefit of the huge increase in the tank's defensiveness and crew survivabilities that come with having a front-mounted power pack and engine. And in the design of Merkava, the design adopted some design to avoid the disadvantage of a front-mounted engine. First is a flat turret design that could help the Merkava to reduce the front area of the tank, which could compensate for the increased height of the tank due to the front-mounted engine. And at the same time, the high position turret design also gives the main gun of tank to have a greater angle of elevation, and thus allow the Merkava tank to take full advantage of the hill desert terrain in the Middle East, and it could use the hill as a cover for firing. And in addition, like the Israel also have a sloping armor design for the flat turrets, and which could allow the tank to have a more depth of armor protection. And more benefit about the front-mounted engine. Um, so the design of the front power pack could give the rear of the tank a lot of more available internal space, and those space could allow the crew of the damaged or depowered Merkava tanks to be withdrawn from the battlefield with the help of the friendly Merkava tank, and that could further help the Israel army to reduce the combat casualty. And concept definition. When developing a new type of tank, there is a various of system concepts needs to be considered. One is the firepower. So need to consider the firepower strength of the tank itself, like the main gun and the accompanying onboard weapon. And then it's the protection of the hull, and the ability to protect the crew on board. And also, the tank needs to maintain appropriate mobility while satisfying the firepower and the protection. And in addition, it also needs to consider the tank's own military purpose and the needs of the army. And also need to consider the development and the production cost of the tank. Here is an example of the sloping armor we talked about before. It brings more armor depth to protect the tank. So referring to this figure, we could clearly see that with the angle increases, it gives the tank more protection, more armor depth to protect the tank. And here we into the engineering development part. And first about the advanced development. So in order to maximize the protection performance of the main battle tank and the ability to protect the personnel on board, in the engineering design, Merkava chose to front mount the tank's engine. And also accompanying with the front engine is the rear mounted turret seat. And this design gives the Merkava allows the turret of the Merkava to be located at the highest point of the upper cut of the chassis. So it gives tank a greater angle of elevation of the main gun. And the sloping armor design enhanced the probability of causing ricochet. Also, it gives more depth of armor penetration protection for the same weight of the armor. And yeah, so more specific about the turret design. So unlike the traditional flat style, the flat turret, the flat turret of the Israel Merkavas, so the turret protection is lowered to reduce the chance of being hit. And on the other hand, the flat turret shape is modified to increase the equivalent thickness and probability of shoot trap. And so the Merkava's turret has almost no vertical area, and it has a relatively narrow front projection. And here is a picture we could see. That is the Israel's Merkava's turret design. It's flat and slope and has a slope angle. And here is a German Leopard 2A4 tank design. And comparing with the Leopard, we could see that the front projectile of Merkava turret, the tank turret, the front projectile of the tank turret is relatively small, and it has a greater chance. The flattened turret has a greater chance of having a shoot trap